Good morning. I'd like to call to order the May 12th, 2015 meeting of the City of Columbia Board of Zoning Appeals. My name is Ernest Cromartie III. I have the pleasure of serving as board chair. At this time, I'd like to introduce the members of the board. To my far, left, we have Mr. Calhoun McMeekin. To his immediate right, we have Mr. Reggie McKnight. To my immediate left, we have Mr. Patrick Hubbard. To my immediate right, we have Preston Young. To his immediate right, we have Patricia Durkin. And to her immediate right, we have Mr. Chuck Sally. I'd also like to introduce the members of staff that will assist the board during this meeting. We have Mr. Brian Cook, Zoning Administrator, Andrew Livingood, Deputy Zoning Administrator, and Andre Wolf, Senior Secretary for Planning and Development Services. This board is charged with hearing applications for special exceptions, variances, and administrative appeals. All testimony is recorded for the record, and anyone wishing to speak will need to be sworn and must come up to the podium. No testimony can be taken from the floor. When you come up to the podium, state your name and please speak clearly into the microphone because, once again, the meeting is being recorded. For all of those who plan to speak, if you would at this time, please stand and raise your right hand. Do you affirm or attest that the testimony you will give today is the truth and nothing but the truth? Thank you. At this time, I'll turn things over to Mr. Cook.
Thank you, sir. We'll start with the consent agenda. I will read each case description on the consent agenda. Unless a board member requests that a case be removed from the consent agenda after it is read or announced, the items on the consent agenda will not be discussed. Any cases will be considered with one motion. Therefore, if someone present would like to discuss an item on the consent agenda, it is imperative that they raise their hand or otherwise get the attention of the board chair after the specific case is read or announced. First item on the consent agenda today is the approval of April 14th, 2015 minutes. The second item on the consent agenda is case 15-038 variance. It's at 914 Abbeville Street, tax map number 09012-11-04, a variance to the rear yard setback requirements to construct an addition. That concludes the items on the consent agenda today, Mr. Chairman.
Is there any here to speak in opposition to the item that is on the consent agenda? Seeing none, do we have a motion regarding the item on the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda, subject to any conditions that may be found in the case summary for the application, as well as any exhibits in the case summary for that application, and to adopt as the findings of the board those findings for the case prepared by the staff also found within the case file.
We have a motion from Mr. Hubbard. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second from Mr. Young. All in favor of approving the item on consent agenda, please state aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None opposed? That item has been approved.
Can we include the April minutes?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the April 14, 2015 minutes. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Mr. McKnight. All in favor of approving last month's meetings, please state aye. Aye. So approved. The minutes have been approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That takes us to the regular agenda. The first item today under new business on the regular agenda is case 15-019 special exception. It's a special exception to permit a residential care facility. The application for special exception is to allow the establishment of a 14-bed, 7-bedroom residential care facility within an approximate 3,898 square feet residential building in the Lion Street neighborhood. Specifically, the applicant is requesting approval of a halfway house for recovering addicts and alcoholics run by Second Chance Housing, an incorporated nonprofit entity. Also in consideration for the board today is a variance request to the parking requirements from residential care facility. According to the applicant, the facility opened and it's been operating since approximately 2002. Shortly after his purchase of the property, and has operated more or less described in the application materials. However, this office has not been able to find a record of a zoning approval for the facility, and in November of last year, the zoning inspector for the area responded to a report of more than 3 unrelated individuals residing in the address, and upon inspection, this status was confirmed, and as such, the application is before you today. The property, again, is at 818 Tree Street, and it is zoned RG2, and the applicant is here to answer any questions.
I would ask, unless members of the board disagree, that this is also case number 7, and for the purposes of efficiency, while the applicant is up, and once they have presented the special exception, it may be easy for the board to then also consider the variance, just since it's the same set of facts, same property.
Right, absolutely. And
Can
that
we
would-
combine those two?
Sure, we can. Item number 7 is 15-036 variance, again, 818 Tree Street, tax map 11414-17-13. It's a variance to the parking requirements for residential care facility, and it would be appropriate for the both heard at the same time, since the
All right,
applicant is up,
that's fine.
correct?
Is the applicant for 818 Tree Street present? Please come forward. Good morning.
Good morning.
Just so you understand what we have done, you have 2 applications before us this morning. One is for a special exception. The second is for a variance. One is listed as item number 2 on our agenda, the other item number 7, as opposed to having you sit down and go through 3, 4, and 5, and 6. We're just going to have you handle both of them while you're up here at one time. We're going to start with the special exception application.
Thank
If you would, in order to properly evaluate a request for a special exception, you submitted several answers to the criteria. If you would, can you go through those for us, please?
you. Just 1 minute.
Did he get his?
Yes, sir. Okay. Sure, okay, great. Thank you.
Please state your name for the record.
My name is Clarence Portier. I'm the Executive Director of Second Chance Housing.
If you would, Mr. Portier, can you go through the criteria for the special exception, specifically the impact of your proposed special exception upon vehicular and pedestrian safety, environmental factors, aesthetics, public safety and nuisance conditions, concentration, character, compatibility with the surrounding area and location, and the public interest?
Okay, the very first question that was asked was the special exception would be the substantial adverse impact on the traffic. And I took photographs, and if you could look in your folder, you could see the photographs. It's only 3 houses on 818 Tree Street. It's only 3 houses. There's very little traffic as far as daily basis. It's no one parking on the street itself other than at 820. At 816 Tree Street, the man that actually owned that house bought the lot directly next door and paved it, and he parked all his cars there. So it's not a lot of traffic that runs up and down the street. So therefore, we will, what we doing at Second Chance Housing will have no impact on the traffic itself at all. And also on number 2, in the special exception, it talks about the impact of the property next door and the environment, the noise, the lighting. We never had a problem with anybody contesting that we have a lot of noise going on over there. We got rules and criteria set up that at 8:30 No one is outside, just wandering around, so the house really shuts down around 8:30, 9 o'clock. Nobody have ever did any complaining. My next door neighbor, he's a wonderful person. He never made no complaints about what we do there, so it don't have no impact in that way. And the third proposal is you asking about the character of the area. Well, the area haven't changed any. If you take a look at the photographs I gave you, like I stated earlier, it's only 3 houses on the whole entire block. It's basically empty. So it's no impact on the character of the area. Normally the guy that stays at Second Chance Housing, the majority of them actually goes out and work at the day labor, go to the city of Columbia, different places like that, and work. So no one is really there that much in the daytime, other than those that are unable to work, and those are the veterans that receive monthly checks, and they the only one that be there. But all working body individuals go out every morning and they leave and go to work. So it's not a lot of people just fumbling around day or night. So it won't have any impact whatsoever. Number 7, no, we got number 4 here. Adverse impact on the public safety or create a nuisance condition, determinant of the public interest. Well, everyone in the neighborhood seems to like Second Chance Housing and what it does. Each year we feed the senior citizens, we feed all the senior citizen facilities. We open up Second Chance Housing to the community so they can come and get involved. We have various churches that come and we bring food during the Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays. We feed the entire communities, Martin Luther King community, Lyon Street community, Waverly Street community, and surrounding areas. So it's the only time we have a large amount of people is during the Christmas and Thanksgiving holidays, and we inform all of our neighbors what we are going to do, and no one have ever stated that they did not want us to do it. Matter of fact, everybody want to participate, so there's no impact there. Number 5, you asking about the establishment special exception does not create a concentrated or proliferation of the same or similar special effects. Okay, then. Don't really quite understand that question. It seems like it's basically related to the same identical question as number 4. Oh, yeah, okay. Now I understand what you're asking. Thank you. As I stated once before, we have been there since September the 7th of 2002. We have not seen no one else come and try to put a facility there to help the community, help recovering addicts and alcoholics, dual diagnosed individuals. Now, I cannot speak, I don't have a crystal ball, so I can't speak for the near future what somebody may do, but as of today, I have not heard, and I go to all the neighborhood association meetings. No one have came in and made a proposal to create a recovery house or a group home or residential care facility in that area. So I would assume that no one is really interested in doing such work in that area. They may want to do it somewhere else, but so far we haven't got any information in concern to anyone wanting to do it. So I think we're going to probably be the only ones out there in that neighborhood that's trying to do something to help the community, help the individuals that is seeking help, and we would like to continue as well. Number 6 is character and intent of the underland district. Okay. You're actually now what the we talking about the character of the area itself. Once again, I'm going to state that if you look at the photograph, Second Chance Housing sits on the street with only 3 houses on the entire block. They're knocking down everything around us. Every time a house go empty, somehow or another get burnt, and the city come along with the bulldozers and knock them down. So, really, our areas look like it's deteriorating, to be totally honest with the board. They're not building in that area. They're not doing anything to reconstruct the houses that they're knocking down. So we're not going to have no kind of impact on the area in no kind of way that would be detrimental to the area that's already, you know, seems like it's falling apart. To be totally honest with you, I think the best thing going in that area is Second Chance Housing. I'm pretty sure y'all familiar with King Street and Millwood and Tree Street and Bratton Street. So, you know, I don't find it to be no problem to continue to do as we're doing. That's right. With the advice of someone knowing exactly what these questions is asking, Second Chance Housing is really vital to the community. We giving people a chance, an opportunity to get their life together, and not only do we go to different facilities and entities outside of our area, but we also get people off the street and give them a chance right in the neighborhood. So it's a good thing that's going on here. So it won't take no kind of major impact on what's going on in the community. Number 7. We're at number 7 now. And y'all have to forgive me because I am very nervous.
No need to be nervous, sir.
Okay.
You're doing fine.
Inappropriate for the location.
He's got some strong pillars. He's got some strong pillars.
Adjacent. Okay, we talking about the adjacent property. Once again, if you could look at the photographs, and matter of fact, I did bring them. Do y'all have those photographs?
We do, yes, sir.
Okay.
We do.
If you notice on the photographs, now, yeah, looking directly at going down toward Millwood off of Bratton and Tree Street, it's nothing over there. It's empty. The lot next door to 818 Tree Street is empty. The lot next to the empty lot on the left-hand side facing 818 Tree Street is empty. It's a house directly on the right-hand side, and once you pass that house, there's an empty lot, which my neighbor bought so he can park his cars there. And next to it is a house, and thereafter, it's an empty lot again, and you own Millwood. So we don't have a lot of adjacent property to be concerned about. My neighbor is completely satisfied with what I'm doing. The young lady that just moved from Newberry, South Carolina, in the house on the end, her name is on that petition because she thinks it's a wonderful thing that I'm doing. So we don't have any problem in that area as well. And number 8, now, public interest. I have been there since September 7, 2002, and I have not had any complaints. The public interest in my neighborhood is totally, absolutely satisfied. Now, outside of my neighborhood, I can't speak for them. I don't have a lot of people. I just have a lot of church coming, like Shannon United Methodist Church, Zion Canaan Church, and places like that, but they are not in my community itself. So I can only speak for the community in which I serve and I live, and I have this house. Everybody in that community is satisfied. The public interest seems to be pretty, in favor of what I do because of the different entities that I'm involved with. I work with Morris Village, Loretta, Richland Springs, Aurora down in Aiken, South Carolina, all the different entities that involved in helping people with problems with alcohol and drugs. I'm mostly involved with them, so the public interest is in my favor.
Mr. Porty, thank you for guiding us through those criteria. If this board were inclined to approve your request for a special exception, there would be 3 conditions that we would like to have considered and would be applied to the special exception. The first is that the residential care facility shall operate in substantial conformance with the application that you've submitted, any testimony you've provided. The second is that the halfway house will comply with all state and local requirements, including but not limited to the building code. And then the third would be following vacancy, abandonment, or discontinuance of this use for a period of 12 consecutive months, the special exception shall be considered completed and shall expire. Do you have any opposition to those 3 criteria or conditions?
Yes, I do. My request was not to have a residential care home. I have researched the criteria and the mandates that governs residential care homes, and it would not be in my best interest to have a residential care home simply because of the criteria and mandates that govern it. I would like for Second Chance Housing to continue to operate as is, and it's more of a halfway house, group home, shelter. I really don't see it being a residential care. Residential care is pretty.
Well, and I'll let staff speak to this more specifically. We understand that it is operating as a halfway house, but the industry code places a halfway house within the umbrella of residential care facility. So that's the term that staff has used in terms of the request that you've put forth. So we aren't changing what it is you're doing. It's just that the halfway house that you're operating fits under the umbrella of a residential care facility.
And I respect that.
Okay.
Matter of fact, I got the description under the 8361 residential care. And what I did was I actually called DHEC, and they sent me online to look at what a residential care consists of and the construction part of it. If it is related to a residential care as a halfway house, and I would have to do the construction to comply to a residential care based on the governing part of the halfway house, I'm gonna have to reconstruct the whole house. Is
All right,
that correct?
Let me refer you to staff on that.
Yeah, 'cause I need more clarity on, what we're doing here when we say residential care.
Yes, the use of the term residential care in this application is as it applies to the zoning ordinance. And that's the category within the zoning ordinance that a halfway house is placed. State may have its own specific terms and how they define a group home, residential care facility, et cetera. And certainly as it applies or does not apply to Mr. Porte's application is how he would have to adhere to state law. So if they do not determine him to be a residential care facility, that's the state's determination. And likewise with the building code. There are numerous instances where zoning code, building code, other regulations use the same terms in different ways. And this is one of those situations.
To put it more succinctly, I'll make sure that I understand it.
Yeah.
It's always the same thing that Mr. Porte is doing. We call it one thing, they call it another.
Correct.
But it's still the same
Yeah.
thing.
And specific to the condition that staff has asked for about compliance with building code, it would be the building code for how he's utilizing the building, independent of how zoning determines to classify as use.
And there is no other status for him to apply under. I mean, it is what it is.
Correct. Yeah, there's not a separate category for a halfway house.
Joseph Henry for Clarence Porte. The only concern that Mr. Porte has is that if he takes a residential care designation, that is going to put him in line to comply with certain regulations that are much more restrictive than what he's having to do now, which in effect would put him out of business if he has to make those kind of configurations, because it's going to cause him to have to go in and reconstruct his facility to comply with building codes as the state interprets them for residential care facilities. Unless there's going to be some kind of clarification from the city that this is something that is acceptable under the city ordinance, and they're asking the state to recognize that as well, because otherwise the state can come in and say, well, you don't comply with the current requirements for a residential care facility. Although the city, I understand, is doing this in a blanket manner, it may not be interpreted or applied the same way when the state gets involved, because the state has some say over how the residential care facility has to be configured and how it's regulated. That is the concern that he has. It may effectively change the character of what he's offering to the community as his business is currently structured.
Our discussions today are all being recorded, and they are a record. And basically, that's what we have been saying. What you've said, what we have been saying, and the same thing. Right. They call it this, we call it that, but it's the same thing. And I can tell you, DHEC doesn't really care what we call it too much.
That's the concern that we have. We don't want DHEC to come in later and jump on Mr. Porte and say,
yes, and
you are out of compliance with state law, and we want to shut you down if you don't comply.
And the record has indicated, and I want to make you understand, I want to try to give you a comfort factor. The record is saying that we have, precisely like you said, we have our system, they have their system, and nothing we do today is meant in any way whatsoever, other than the approval of the exception, to affect what they do with DHEC. And there are no commitments, binding, whatever, on Mr. Porte concerning DHEC. And I appreciate your wanting to be very careful to make sure, because quite frankly, I have been very impressed with this file. I have, not only does he need to be complimented, the neighborhood needs to be complimented for embracing a program like this. I know a lot about, not only about Columbia, but about other cities, because of some things I do outside this room. And this is very rare to see a neighborhood embrace this kind of program. So that I'm on your side, and I think you have enough comfort that it won't hurt him.
And I'm a,
Concerned with that, and we just wanted to make sure that it was clear.
Absolutely, yes.
and I'm going to piggyback what Mr. Hubbard said. This is, I've been on the board for many years, and I don't think I've ever seen an applicant reach out to the community and bring to the board 160 plus signatures. I mean, this board embraces when businesses reach out to the community, and so I commend you for having done that, for having gone out and said, this is where I operate, this is where I do business, and I want to show you that my community supports me. I've never seen 160 plus signatures that say, I like what you're doing, regardless of what it is, and so I want to commend you for doing that. just so we can be clear on the record, I presented 3 conditions, and you spoke to the issue of the term that was being used, but you never spoke to the conditions themselves. So I'm going to reread the conditions that we would like to have apply. That the halfway house shall operate in substantial conformance with the application, submitted materials, testimony before the board regarding its operation, that the halfway house shall comply with all state and local requirements, including but not limited to building code, and following vacancy, abandonment, or discontinuance of this use for a period of 12 consecutive months, this special exception shall be considered complete and shall expire. Do you have any opposition to those 3 criteria?
The only one that we had the concern with was the compliance with state and local regulations, because like we just stated, if the state interprets the requirement for a residential care facility differently and more restrictively than you do, that will cause a problem in Mr. Portee's operation.
And that's why
Can I ask a question of maybe the chair, maybe the applicant, maybe the staff, but, because I want to be sensitive about what we call it, but does it matter what we call it?
I don't.
Once it goes past us, I don't think what we call it, if we approve it and call it what we have to call it, that should not have any bearing. I mean, if you have an issue in the,
Near future.
you can count 3. But I think what I'm trying to wrap my head around is that if we have to call it a residential care facility or a halfway house, we have to use the terminology that's available to us. And I want to be sensitive, too, that it doesn't, moving forward, you know, have a ripple effect. Well, BOZA called it this, we're going to call it this. And I think from what I'm hearing from my colleagues is it doesn't matter what we call it once it gets kicked up the food chain, so to speak. So again, I want to be sensitive to that, but I don't know that burden falls on us to call it whatever it's going to be called by DHEC.
Right. I think what we should do and be clear of is the authority that we have is limited to zoning. Whether we call it a halfway house, a residential care facility, widget A or widget X.
Yeah.
Whatever we call it, it's limited to zoning because that's the scope of our authority. So while I understand your concern, what we call it will have no impact upon state or DHEC or building regulation. State, DHEC, or whomever, based upon your use, will call it whatever fits their guide. And so therefore, you know, we can call it a halfway house, but whether the state calls it a halfway house or a residential care facility is not determined by what we say today. In addition, whatever they define it as, they will then apply their code as such. So I understand the concern, but we can't call it anything different than what it fits under for our purposes, which is limited to zoning.
And I understand the limitations that you have to work within. However, the concern we would have is that DHEC wouldn't go back and take the zoning designation that you have given it and say that because they designated it as a halfway house and we have regulations that specifically address halfway house, they've zoned it as a halfway house and used the zoning to extrapolate that he now has to comply with special provisions of state code requiring certain things of halfway houses. We don't want, because that would operate as a retroactive spot zoning. It is currently not zoned as a halfway house. If it gets zoned that way, and DHEC takes that zoning as a bridge to get into regulations that it might otherwise impose, that could operate as a retroactive spot zoning to keep out what he's doing.
So
Which would then
Look,
be,
let me ask a question, and I don't know that we can do this. What would you have us call it?
I would just have, and I understand you have limited designations that you have to offer. If there is something in the designation that will help you define further what he's doing, rather than having it blanketly called something that may have adverse repercussions.
Right.
That would be what I think would be helpful to us, because then DHEC, when it's reviewing, would look at that and say, this is what the city intended. They didn't intend for this to be a halfway house in the true sense of the word. It is something that is an anomaly, because this particular halfway house is designated this way simply because of limited designations that the city has to offer, but it doesn't operate as your typical halfway house.
Right, but what and trying to help you, I mean, let me ask this of staff. I mean, what are our options? I mean, we can't just make up a designation. You know, and I know you know that, but I'm just saying, I mean, if we've only, you know, it may well be a halfway house. But you know, for us to be able to try to, and I think that this is why there are variances and special exceptions. I mean, so you can, you know, not everything fits a cookie cutter necessarily. That's what we do up here. But on some level, you have to call it something. And we've only got so much that we can draw from. I mean, let me ask this of staff. I mean, what other designations could we choose from, if any?
It's pretty much limited. I mean, you have a single-family home that's been operating, you know, since 2002 in this manner. You know, residential care, under that broad category, umbrella, if you will, it's a lot of different other terms that kind of fall within that. It's not a boarding home, group home. It's a residential care facility based on our zoning ordinance, and that's definition that may be different than the state. A halfway house, you know, our regulations are all we can really focus on in the zoning ordinance, or a
And
halfway house.
I think what we're trying to get across is, if we call it, let me just do a supposition,
May I offer a suggestion?
just real quick, and then I'll, just train
Well,
of thought.
I-
If we were to
First,
call it
I think we
something.
need to get it out there. If we don't call it this, we can't give you approval.
Right.
So I think you need to kind of get, as I understand it, so I think that has to be in mind.
I'm just trying to underscore y'all's point. It doesn't matter what we call it if some other governing entity decides to call it something else. It doesn't matter.
So,
I want to add one other thing. I understand, and I think it's always good to worry about having a comfort factor that somebody's not going to play gotcha on you later, okay? Our hands are tied unless we amend the ordinance, and we don't amend it, city council amends it, and that takes a long time. Unless the ordinance is amended, we have to call it, as I understand it, what the staff has said it's called. In the motion, I want to say, though, in terms of the formal sort of push to try to give you comfort factor, in the motion to approve, we will state explicitly that we understand it's really a halfway house. It operates just the way you've described it today. And in that motion, we will say we are only doing it this way because we have to under our ordinance. And that will be a formal motion that you could show to DHEC.
And can you further state that it's for the purposes that Mr. Forte has outlined?
Correct.
I think that'll give us what we need, because we just don't want DHEC to come behind you cold and pick this thing up and say, it's bam, a halfway house is subject to all of our regulations as written.
Right.
If you approve it a certain way and specify.
We will specify it in the motion, and if you don't like it, we will ask you to suggest additional language.
I seriously believe that you've made the effort that I think will help us do what we need.
Okay.
And Mr. Chairman,
Thank you.
if I may, obviously, we make our motion and approve for a halfway house based on our definition and the conditions that we want to put on it. There again, we have no control over the state and the regulations and what may or may not apply. So just wanted to put that off the record.
That's fine. And also for the record, would each of the two pillars state their name? Just for the record, I think you both have given some counsel, so I want to have you on the record as well.
I'm Joseph Henry.
Okay,
And I'm Nathaniel Robinson.
excellent. At this time, I'll close testimony with respect to the special exception, and I will ask if there's anyone here to speak in favor or in opposition to this application. Please
Mike.
come to the,
Mike.
You need to be sworn.
Do I need to be sworn?
have you, were you here at the time we did the swearing in?
No, this is my first time ever.
If you would,
appearing.
please raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you give today is the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
All right. Thank you. Please state your name and proceed.
My name's Wesley Few. I'm a local attorney, been practicing here since 1999. I met Clarence in 2003, and he referenced Shannon United Methodist Church. I'm a member there. Several of our Sunday schools have been supportive of what he does. I frequently, not frequently, but when I go through my closet and I'll get clothes and take them over there, and I'll make a surprise visit to the facility. And, you know, nothing speaks louder than having a record from 2002 to 2015 of no complaints. And when I go by there, I find the place to be orderly. I find the men to be respectful of Clarence and what's going on there. And as you've noted here today, 160 petitions, and what he's doing is just, it's amazing, and everything he does is amazing. So I just want to speak in support of it and corroborate some of the things that the board has noted and that Mr. Portee and his other counsel have put forward here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Anyone else here to speak in favor or in opposition to this application? If not, I'll close testimony, and I will take a motion.
I move to
Specificity.
move to approve the request for a special exception. I want to make it clear that the terminology that we are using concerning this special exception is terminology dictated by the City of Columbia zoning code. We are using that terminology only because it has to be used in order to satisfy the conditions in the City of zoning code. It has no other purpose or intent to go beyond what we are dealing with today in terms of the request for special exception. It should have no impact in any other regulatory scheme as to the nature of what's going on. The nature of what's going on should be based upon what Mr. Portee is doing, not on what we might call it today. To quote Shakespeare, this is not part of the motion, but a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. So with that background, I'd like to go through the criteria. As the testimony is indicated, there's no negative effect on vehicular or pedestrian safety, no negative effect on environmental factors, no negative effect on aesthetics. Indeed, it seems to perhaps be a nicer part of the neighborhood in some ways. No negative effect on public safety, surely no nuisance conditions whatsoever. No problems with concentrations of similar uses. Will be consistent with the character, particularly as the evidence is shown concerning how it is conducted. It's compatible with the neighborhood, again, consistent with the evidence about how it has been conducted. And it's clearly in the public interest, both in terms of the neighborhood and in terms of the greater community, in terms of the lives affected by this very wonderful program.
A motion from Mr. Hubbard. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second from Mr. McMeekin. All in favor of granting the special exception based upon the testimony, the conditions, please state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
We didn't state the conditions in the record.
I'm going to make a motion to reopen approval of the special exception. It was brought to my attention that the conditions were omitted from the motion. Do I have a second to reopen that?
Second.
A second from Ms. Durkin. All in favor of reopening the motion to approve the special exception, please state aye.
Aye.
So approved.
This motion includes three conditions as set forth in the materials to repeat that the facility, the halfway house, shall operate in substantial conformance with the submitted materials and testimony before the board today. Secondly, that it will comply with all state and local requirements, including but not limited to the building code. Again, as to this, I want to emphasize that nothing we do today is meant to affect anything whatsoever as to how these other state and local requirements are applied. Finally, that following vacancy, abandonment, or discontinuance of this use for a period of 12 consecutive months, the special exception shall be completed and shall expire.
We have the amended motion by Mr. Hubbard. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second from Mr. McMeekin. All in favor of the amended motion to grant the special exception, please state aye. Aye. So moved. Now we're going to move to the variance. As we have a very good understanding of the underlying property, if someone can speak directly to the criteria for the variance, why it's needed and why it's the minimum necessary, then we can also address that one at this time as well.
You ready for me?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
The main reason we are asking for the variance for the parking is because we have limited access to the back of the house. If you could look at the photographs once again, you can notice, well, one thing, you know, the house was built in, 1940-something, so there's not a lot of space there. So the two vehicles that we do have that we can park will actually have to be in the driveway itself. And because we have so limited access to the back of the house, this is the main reason we're asking for the variance for the parking.
So basically, the configuration of both the property and the house itself constitute the extraordinary factors underlying the request for the variance. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Is the requested variance the minimum necessary to achieve the
Yes, it
requested
is.
purposes?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Given that the adjacent properties are vacant, I can assume that this condition doesn't apply to the other properties?
Excuse me again?
Given that the adjacent parcels are vacant, this condition does not apply to other properties?
Exactly right. You're
Okay.
right.
Would approval of this variance be of any substantial detriment to the adjacent property or the public good or the character of the district?
None whatsoever, sir.
Okay.
Matter of fact, we actually keep the man who owned the property next to us. He's 70-something years old. So we don't even put the burden on him to keep it clean. When the city come by and say it need to be clean, we clean it for him. We cut the grass. We keep it nice and neat for him. He's 76 years old, so we don't lay that burden on him.
I
We take care
understand.
of the property for him.
Now, one of the questions staff has presented to us was that the driveway be maintained in good condition. Is the driveway currently in good condition?
It's in very good condition. We had the Hardaway Concrete Company to come by maybe 8 years ago and put us down fresh concrete.
Okay,
So it's in very good condition.
all right. As a condition to this variance, if we were so inclined to grant it, we would ask that the driveway be maintained in good condition. Are you willing to accept that as a condition of the variance?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any questions of staff or of the board of this applicant for this request for a variance? Is there anyone here to speak in favor or in opposition to this request for a variance? Seeing none, I'll close testimony and I will take a motion.
I move to approve the request for the variance. I also want to make it clear that I'm incorporating by reference all the testimony that was brought into the record today from the discussion of the special exception and treat all that as part of the record as to the variance. The record shows, the testimony and evidence shows that extraordinary exceptional conditions apply here. This is a problem as to these conditions, that we have a lot of pre-zoning development, and this creates problems throughout these older neighborhoods, and so we satisfy that requirement. They do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. This will not be a substantial detriment to adjacent property or to the public good, and the character of the district will not be adversely affected. This is the minimum necessary to allow the applicant to make a reasonable use of his property and it will be in harmony with the purposes and intent of the ordinance and not injurious to the neighborhood or to the public welfare. I would like to also indicate this is all conditioned on the maintenance of the driveway in good condition.
We have a motion for case number 15-036-V, made by Mr. Hubbard. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second from Mr. McKnight. All in favor of approving this variance, please state aye.
Aye.
Both your special exception and your variance have been approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank y'all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Have a good day.
Can I speak to the gentleman on the end there for a minute? It's a private matter, doesn't have anything to do with
Well, since we're currently in the meeting,
Yeah.
Look, you said the other guy had a one. Look, you didn't tell the other guy had one. Yours looks better.
he's already told me, so.
I got it from that man. I got it from that man right there.
Did you really? Yeah, he, oh, did you really?
I like it. It's really sharp.
Next item on the agenda is case 15-031, special exception at 3506 Main Street, tax map 09112-06-08. Application is for a special exception to allow a liquor store with an existing vacant suite on North Main Street, again at 3506 North Main Street. Property is zoned MX1, and it is within the North Main Corridor overlay. I believe there's several people signed up to speak.
Is the applicant present?
I'd like to ask staff, is it fair to assume that normal notices to the applicant concerning attendance have been taken care of?
Yes, I did contact the applicant yesterday by way of email with the agenda and case summary.
So there's,
And the
we
property was posted.
pardon? Would it be unfair to him in terms of normal proceedings to go forward in his absence? Is there something special about this?
Not to my knowledge, as Mr. Livingood said, the applicant was notified, the property was posted with a meeting date, and like I said, I believe several people are signed up, so it would be proper to move forward in his absence.
I think we also have members of the public who are here. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Can I ask a question? I think we should move forward, but when you reached out to the applicant, did they confirm the receipt of an email or a phone call or however you, I mean, the burden's not on you. And I'm just curious if there was any kind of acknowledgement.
Thank you. I did not receive acknowledgement, no.
Okay.
Given that the property was properly posted, given that we have testimony from staff that the applicant was notified, and given that we have members of the public who obviously knew that the application was before us today, I will take any testimony from members of the public regarding this application. Please come forward.
My name is Steve Gentino, and I live in the neighborhood. We moved here in September of last year. I was a CFO for a nonprofit facility in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, that is very similar to two properties that are across the street on Main Street. And the facilities that I worked in, it was a halfway house. It was a recovery facility. The issues that the men and women were getting into up there were long-term and difficult to overcome. And the Providence House and the women's facility that is directly across the street are dealing with men and women with substance abuse, including alcohol abuse. And to have a temptation directly across the street within a 30-second brief walk would be very difficult and inappropriate, I think. So I'm speaking against that. You know, the success of those facilities, it depends on many factors, and one factor is eliminating the temptation And we know in our personal lives, the personal temptations we have, often taken care of best by simply eliminating a temptation. And that's what it is directly across the street. So I'd be speaking against having a liquor store right across the street.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else here to speak in favor or in opposition to this application?
My name is Sabrina Odom. I am the Executive Director of the North Columbia Business Association. I'm speaking in opposition of the liquor store. We already have 3 liquor stores, or maybe more, on that same street. I also want to mention we do have liquor stores that are a member of our organization who gives back to the community and run a great business. We also encourage businesses on North Main, but we have enough liquor stores. Our community is full of pride and have good neighborhood association presidents and community leader. This particular location is in front of a nonprofit who's in the business of changing lives. We as NCBA encourage businesses to come to our area, but we also have a responsibility to look out for our community and other business owners in our area. And I just want to say, again, we already have enough liquor stores on North Main Street. And I just want to stop this. Right now, we in the position of rebranding our area, and this is just not the season right now for another liquor store, and especially one in front of halfway houses who are trying to change people's lives. Thank you.
Quick question for you, ma'am. Where are the other liquor stores in this area or along the North Main corridor?
We have, they're further up North Main Street. We have D&D's Liquors.
Okay.
We also have a beer and wine garage, all great stores in part of the community. And we also have another liquor store I can't think of the name of, but I know we have a couple of them already on North Main Street.
Excuse me, but what mileage? Because I Googled this liquor store, and I didn't see any that were in close proximity. So could you tell me how far away they are from this liquor store?
No, they're not close. They're probably maybe a mile or 2 down the street.
Okay.
But I'm in opposition because of the halfway house across the street from it,
Okay.
who are changing lives. And that's why I'm in opposition of this liquor store. And also, we have enough of them in the area. I speak not for just North Main Street, but in our area.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Is there anyone else to speak in favor or in opposition to this application?
Good morning. My name is Michael Hill. I'm president of the Hyde Park Keenan Terrace Neighborhood Association. I think a letter from me and a copy of a resolution that was passed by the association on March 16th is included in the file. The association has voted and indicated its opposition to this request for a variance to establish a liquor store. There are a number of reasons. The ones that are stated in the resolution mostly relate to the fact that we have these 2 social service organizations, the Providence Home and the Women's Shelter, which are basically right across the street. The association really recognizes the value of these organizations and the services that they provide to the community. They are excellent members of the community. We have a good working relationship with them. And, you know, they're also going to get up here and talk about this, and I think that in some ways what they have to say is perhaps more valuable than what we have to say as the neighborhood association. But we support them, and we support them in their opposition to the establishment of this liquor store. Beyond that, I think the building is really not particularly suited to, and the lot are not very suited to having a liquor store. This is a very busy intersection. It's right up from the intersection of North Main and Sunset. There is a great deal of traffic that goes up and down North Main. The turn in and turn out and the parking, I think, are not really adequate for this kind of establishment. Furthermore, the liquor store is attached to, this is all attached to a residence. It's a very strange building, in my view, and I think that for all of those reasons, the site is not suitable for this type of establishment. We also do have a question about the number of parking spaces. There's very limited parking that would actually be on this lot, and it's hard to imagine that we would see this without some kind of spillover onto the residential lot or onto this kind of semi-occupied lot that is next door. Primarily, however, the question is this matter of being located across from the women's shelter and from Providence Home. Some other people who are going to get up here are also going to talk about some inaccuracies or questions that we have about statements that are made in the application. One that I have relates to Capital Sales, Inc. This company is listed as being a part of the application. According to the Secretary of State's website, this company is in forfeiture. They are not in good standing with the state of South Carolina. I made a call to the Secretary of State's office this morning, and they confirmed, I have a printout of the information from the website I can give to you. They confirmed that that information is accurate and that this company was, it says a dissolved date of July 30th, 2014. That indicates that the company is not in good standing with the state of South Carolina. Due to the late notice of the agenda and everything, I was not able to file a request for information about tax compliance with the Department of Revenue, but my sense is that it's probably something dealing with tax issues. There are some other issues that Mr. Munson is going to be talking about in terms of whether or not the application actually meets the variance. I'll just say in closing, one of the things we're really trying to do is set some minimum standards in our community. I think it's very important all up along North Main with businesses, with zoning, with code enforcement, all these kinds of things. And this application, I think, really does not meet what we see as those minimum standards. It's a very strange lot, strange building, terrible location related to the neighbors, and there are a number of problems with the applications, including the name of the company that is included repeatedly in the application packet. And for those reasons, I think that you should deny this application today.
Let me ask you a question, sir. Did the applicant reach out to you or anyone else in that area when it comes to submitting an application, or?
No, sir.
Okay.
And there is a big yellow sign posted on the door of this location in terms of when I believe it even says when the meeting is going to take place.
Okay, all right. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you. And I don't know if you want this information about or I can hand a copy too.
If you would submit that to staff, and they will make it available to us. Is there anyone else here to speak in favor or in opposition to this application? Go ahead, sir.
Excuse me. Good morning. My name's Lyman Munson. I'm Vice President of the Hyde Park Neighborhood Association. I'm speaking in opposition, and I just want to run through quickly criteria for approval of special exceptions. The proposed special exception wouldn't have a substantial impact on vehicular traffic or pedestrian safety. It's a small lot. The lot is 34.7 feet wide. The sketch shows additional parking that doesn't actually occur on the property of the applicant. So I think from a space point of view, supposed to have 10 parking spaces, 3.5 per thousand. I just don't see how they're going to get there on 34.7 feet. They show sketches. The sketch shows additional parking to the left. It's a zero lot line that belongs to 3508, another owner. So traffic will be definitely impacted, particularly drive home, 5 to 7 o'clock. I think people will be backing in and backing out of this space. There won't be a turnaround on the property. As far as the environmental factors, noise, the applicant talks about deterring litter, loitering, etc. Signs will be posted and rules will be enforced. I don't know how you enforce a rule against littering. Applicant doesn't make any concrete suggestions about how to minimize littering. The exception wouldn't have a substantial adverse effect. What we're doing, an exception of this type, in my mind, is forever. This will be a liquor store forever if you approve this exception. The North Main overlay envisions a village, a community. This is a kind of a funny non-conforming property. It's actually two separate parcels that are connected with some sort of breezeway or crosswalk that's not visible from the street. I think we would ensure what now would be a non-conforming use if an exception were to be granted. And lastly, the proposed special exception appropriate for its location, you've heard from other people. It's right across the street from people that get on the bus in the morning, go to work, and come home in the afternoon, get off the bus. Bus stop's right in front of this place. I'd hate for them to look over there and see a liquor store instead of heading back home. So with those things, I think it's clear it's an inappropriate use for the property, not to say there might not be a need for a liquor store. And the applicant makes the point that there may not be one within a mile. I think there is one over on River Drive, corner of Sunset, but that's not walking distance for some people. There are other locations in the immediate area that would be more appropriate, that would have sufficient parking. This location is not that one. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Ellen Fishburne Triplett. I live in the community at 203 Summerlee Drive, and I've lived there for 10 years. I'm a past president of Hyatt Park Keenan Terrace Neighborhood Association, and I'm active also with Concerned Citizens of Eau Claire in North Columbia. We're concerned about the development and the redevelopment of our neighborhood, the rebranding, as Sabrina mentioned. This proposed liquor store is not a good fit. Location-wise, as has already been mentioned, also we have a lot of money invested by the city and more coming with streetscaping to try and reinvigorate the neighborhood, reinvigorate North Main Street. This is just not a good fit. I know that back in February, this board decided against a similar facility over on Farrow Road. I applaud that decision. I hope that you will make the same decision here. We have a representative from the Women's Shelter, Angela Whitehead, I believe, would like to speak. Thank you.
My name is Angela Whitehead, and I'm the program director at the Women's Shelter, which is directly across the street, exactly 53 steps, normal strides, my strides, from the end of our property at 3425 North Main to the front door of what would become a liquor store, granted. Our mission is to protect and help women in any crisis to thrive. Having this type of facility in their face is a direct hit. It doesn't help the mission. We've been in that location for 38 years. We have been a part of many, many, many success stories. We would like to continue that. But with that type of adversity directly across the street, and I think it was stated the bus stop is directly in front of this location. When they step off the bus, they're right there at it. It's just not a safe environment. The whole area is a very vulnerable area. Of course, we have the Providence Men's Home next to us, who've been operating as long, if not longer, than we have. Their residents are facing the same things, and they're facing the same problems, and we're working with the same issues. And having that establishment there can be deadly to the missions of what we're doing and what we're trying to do. And we're trying to help the women, and they're helping the men to get back into the community, to be that productive member of society, to get that job, to be a part of the community in a positive way. And that just prohibits what we're trying to do. So I ask that it be denied, that it not stand.
Thank you. Anyone else here to speak in favor or in opposition to this application?
My name is Jimmy Braddock. I'm the program director at the Providence Home. All the reasons that I'm here have already been stated. Angela stated it's 50-something steps from their property, add 20 steps, and that's the distance from our property. We've got on a daily basis 41 men at 3421 North Main Street, so we're directly across. All of our men, mostly veterans, come in homeless, dealing with substance abuse issues. We've also got 3 homes in the neighborhood, not as close, but in close proximity. So a total of 51 men with varying times of lengths of stay and turnover. We'll have anywhere from 175 to 250 men come through in a year, and that's 175 to 250 lives that can potentially be altered by the location of a liquor store. I hope this doesn't come across as melodramatic or overly dramatic, but we are talking about life and death choices here. For some of these men, some of these women, to make that choice, it could mean death. And it is that serious. As a person in recovery myself, I know that. And I take the safety of these men and these women in recovery very seriously. And we're just adamantly opposed to that environment, that temptation being right across the street. Opposed to the extent that I view it as almost predatory, that it's being placed in a vulnerable or an environment that is extremely vulnerable. So again, we're just adamantly opposed to it. We appreciate our community standing behind us and sharing those same things. So thanks for letting me be here.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good morning. My name is Patricia Brown. I'm president of the Northwood Hills Neighborhood Association. Oh, thank you. When we had our meeting on May 4th, we talked about this coming up to the zoning board. Our neighborhood members were against it. We feel that we are on the brink of our North Eau Claire, North Main area blossoming, businesses coming, but we would not like to see our area overpopulated with liquor stores, and we feel like this would not be a positive addition to the Eau Claire area and our dream of Eau Claire Main Street corridor becoming a viable business area. We hope that you will reject the request to establish a liquor store there. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak in favor or opposition to this application?
Hi, my name is Gareth Fenley, and I wasn't going to speak because there are so many neighbors here, but I find I have an extra comment to make. Would you mind swearing me in?
Oh, okay. Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you give today will be nothing but the truth?
I do.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. In addition to backing the other comments that have been made, I'm one of the founders of the Concerned Citizens of Eau Claire and North Columbia, which stands for responsible business development in our neighborhood, and specifically with reference to alcohol licensing and zoning. I live 2 blocks from this location in the residential area that's on the west side of Main Street, and I affirm that these good people, including the shelter operators, are very good neighbors. There are also other transitional homes in our neighborhood. They are at undisclosed locations for the protection of the residents, and I don't wish to indicate exactly where they are, but I want to say that they too are good neighbors. I live, as I said, 2 blocks away, and there is quite a substantial amount of foot traffic. Many of the residents in our area do not have vehicular transportation, so they will walk from the businesses on Main Street into my neighborhood and past my home. I have not had trouble. However, there are a number of properties that are waiting to be developed that are vacant at this time, and there is a great potential for misuse of the area by people drinking, by people loitering. We watch out and make sure that this doesn't happen, but there is a great concern that if there were a liquor store with a business owner that's not involved in outreaching to the community 2 blocks from me, that the neighborhood could turn in a bad direction, so I oppose this, this decision.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else here to speak in favor or in opposition to this application? In an abundance of caution, is Cheryl M. Qualls present in the galley? Is the property owner, Mary Lee Kinosayan, present? With the applicant, with neither the applicant nor the property owner being present, testimony having been taken, proper notice having been given, at this time I will close testimony, move into board discussion, and receive a motion.
I move to deny the request for special exception. Grounds in support of this is the criteria are not met. The vehicular pedestrian safety requirement that perhaps is not a particular problem, but it is troublesome given the high level of pedestrian uses in this part of Columbia. It's not quite clear exactly about the lights from the record. I would have liked to ask somebody more about it, but the application does not make it absolutely clear why there's no additional lights or noise. The impact on the aesthetic or in particular orientation of spacing a building doesn't seem to be too much of a problem in terms of it. The difficulties begin when you get to other criteria. Number 4 is substantial, whether it have a substantial adverse impact on public safety or create nuisance. I think it will have an adverse impact on at least the nature of the neighborhood. There is apparently, depending on how you find it, there is no concentration in that area, although there are others in some distance. That's not the problem that has been in some neighborhoods. The difficulties really come up with items 6 and 7 on the list, talking about that it has to be consistent with the character and the intent of the underlying district, is indicating in the zoning district descriptions within applicable zoning overlay district goals and requirements. I'm familiar with the overlay requirements for this part of the neighborhood, and this is clearly not, and I think the testimony supports this, that this is not consistent with those overlay goals at all. The application, which is all we have to go on, does not even refer to the overlay district goals, and that all it talks about is that it will serve an area. The next, whether its location will be compatible with permitted uses adjacent to and in the vicinity of the property. Clearly, the testimony has shown that this is not compatible with the existing uses basically across the street from it. Finally, number 8, will it adversely affect the public interest? Once again, as with 6 and 7, here we see this problem. It will adversely affect the public interest, and the testimony clearly supports this.
We have a motion from Mr. Hubbard. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second from Mr. McKnight. All in favor of denying the request for a special exception, please state aye. Aye. Any opposed? This motion has been denied.
Next item today is 15-034 variance, 104 through 110 Percival Road, tax map 16-706-02-01 and 02, and 4 through 7. It's a variance to the maximum allowable sign display surface area for a retail development. Basically, this development that is being proposed was given approval by the Planning Commission as a common group development for their signage. What that means is that it's a unified development, and it could potentially, and does in this case, I believe, span more than one parcel. It's a cohesive development. Generally, in this case, a maximum of 956 square feet of signage and display surface area would be allowed for the development. The applicant proposes a total of 1,603 square feet instead, for a variance of 647 square feet. The applicant is here and can answer any questions.
Let me ask a question of staff. what do you take by the fact that Fort Jackson has no comment on the proposed request? How does that work? Does no comment mean we're okay, or does no comment mean that they just get back? How should we interpret that statement?
It means that we gave notification of the meeting and we did not get a reply.
Yeah, I apologize. Actually, I got a reply from the Ford, and their no comment is just that they did not feel that it was a noteworthy exception. The state law regarding notification, it applies to numerous military facilities throughout the state, and it's intended to deal with zoning changes, and that does include any variance, a special exception, et cetera. But also, more importantly, rezonings where you'd be intensifying use in proximity that might create an incompatibility with the fort. And so, I mean, they're certainly not saying they support it, but they're certainly not saying they have any opposition to it.
Okay.
They have the opportunity to.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
My name is David Brandeis. I reside at 1330 Lady Street. I'm with Genesis Consulting Group here representing the applicant. The applicant is here today in case any questions come up that he needs to talk about. I'll take you just briefly through the property just a little bit. What you see in front of you is an aerial of the property as it exists before we began construction. This piece of property, the triangular piece that is wooded, was actually fort property. It was left over when they built I-77, and it is set that way, for decades and decades. The rest of the property has been various times a nightclub, other commercial uses, some of them not very pleasant commercial uses, and it's also been an issue with vagrancy and people living in those buildings over time. The property has been, that's 5 properties put together. Baker & Baker owned some of the property. Baptist Hospital owned some of the property. A number of other pieces got put together. It's taken, it probably took about 5 years or more to purchase the property from the fort once they decided they want to sell it. So it's been a long, long process to get that done. One of the things that happened is the property immediately was annexed into the city of Columbia. Not really our choice, not much we could do about it when you have water and sewer connections and you're contiguous and you're putting in a commercial development. The first thing you receive is a notice of annexation. Fine with that, happy with that, but it also caused us some issues with our signage. When we originally developed the project looking at either going into Forest Acres or remaining unincorporated in Richland County, we had some other signage requirements that that allowed us to do some more things that the City of Columbia signage ordinances don't allow you to do. I'll talk mainly from this, and there's a lot of information in your package. If you could, just flip down to the a couple of site plans. There's one that shows the locations of the, keep going. Oh yeah, it's kind of big. Keep going. One more. This one. This is basically what the property will be. Petco on one corner, a multi-tenant building with a Panera Bread, Wingstop, Tijuana Flats, and a mattress firm. The future development has not been set yet. We've had a number of inquiries, but we couldn't tell you what's going on the back right now. A couple of things that are unique to the property. I'm going to kind of delve right into the 4 criteria, if you would. The first criteria is the extraordinary and acceptable conditions pertaining to the subject property. First is the odd shape. If you look at this piece of property, there's very little regular about it. It's somewhat of a triangle, but not completely. Pieces of the parcels were cut out. The little hole that you see just above the Petco is a cell tower. If you go back up Forest Drive, there's an EMS station and a fire station. There's also a storage facility on the corner. Really, this property was cut up mainly for the construction of I-77. I think if others had been establishing the property, they certainly wouldn't have made this particular configuration, which is one of the reasons why it sat vacant since 77 got created. The other thing it did is it, in effect, ended the viability of those properties as commercial properties, which is why they fell vacant. When that was Forest Drive, that was a very popular, a very attractive commercial piece of property. When it became set back off the property, it's not a very good piece of property anymore. Go to the one that has the topography. So the first thing that makes it exceptional is the odd shape. The next thing is the topography. If you look at the contours that come down Hill Street, and Hill Street's that little curved street that is on your right of the piece of the property, which is going to become a City of Columbia street. It's been dedicated to the city. There is as much as 18 feet elevation difference from that intersection down to where the Petco sits, and the Petco sits right in that little corner. So that presented us a lot of issues. We can't have access to that piece of property because we have to get down the hill to get to it. To make a commercial piece of property work in a whole, you have to be able to at least see some signage to know what you're looking at. When you're driving down the road and you see a building and you can see in the doors and you can see in the product, you kind of have a feel for what the property is. We don't have that in that particular corner, and as we move back, so for us, signage tells the community what this particular piece of property is. And then finally, unlike a lot of properties along Forest Drive, we really end up with two fronts. And the reason we end up with two fronts is the way the DOT cut the property up with Forest Drive. We're not allowed any access points off of Forest Drive. That's restricted. I-77 is only a few hundred feet to the right of this piece of property. And so we have to come down into Percival, down into Hill Street. If you go to the site plan, that would be useful, to be able to access. So we, in effect, have to come into our property and come to the front of our buildings, which don't face Forest Drive. So this particular piece of property, because of the way we have to access it from traffic, gives us, in effect, two fronts. Mattress Firm would argue that they have three fronts because they're fronted also on Percival. So it presents us a challenge. We can't just put our signage on one side of the buildings because then you go into the property, you have no signage on which building you're coming into. If we just put it on the front of the buildings, it's never seen from the public. And so if you're looking for Mattress Firm and there's no signage off of Forest Drive, you wouldn't be able to find that particular piece of property. So those three things make us extraordinary: the odd shape, the topography, and the fact that we have to have two fronts. Took a little Google tour of Forest Drive, and we're basically the only piece of property until you get to Trenum Plaza that ends up with this two-front scenario. All right, looking at the second condition, the condition noted does not generally apply to other properties. The topography issue is really one of the few topography issues that you see, and it's not a natural condition. The reason Forest Drive gets up so high is to get over I-77. It was constructed up artificially. So this condition, this natural condition, gives us, in effect, a condition that doesn't apply to the other properties. Walmart has something similar, but of course, Walmart, all its signage is in a PDD, and so it has the benefit of additional signage similar to what we're asking about. Most of the properties do not have two sides like we have, and the access points for other properties are generally off of Forest Drive, not off of secondary streets. So to answer the question, the conditions noted do not generally apply to other properties is for very much the same two reasons: the topography, the dual fronts, and the access to allow us to get into the property. Third condition, because of the conditions noted above, the requirements of the zoning ordinance effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the use of the property. We're not saying it completely prohibits us, but it puts this particular commercial property at a competitive disadvantage with the rest of the properties in the area. In order to meet this code, the 300 feet plus the additional you get for the extra over 100 feet, we would end up, if you just broke it up to the multi-tenant building, with about 89 square feet per building, if you did it just evenly spread. If you did it pro rata, the smallest building would have about 50 square feet, and you'd have to put that on the front and back. So what has ended up is a condition not created by this particular piece of property has kind of artificially lowered the amount of signage that you would typically see. And we think that's very important. We're not in front of you asking for you to allow us to have a sign that is twice as big as you would allow. What we're asking for is 2 signs that are of equal size that you would normally see and letting us putting on the front and back. And we think that's important to note in our variance request versus someone who just wants a big giant sign. Finally, the approval of the variance would not be substantially detrimental to the adjacent properties or to the public good or to the character of the district would not be harmed. Very commercial area. We're definitely in an area that is commercial. Because of the 2 fronts, when the public looks at this, they're not going to say, wow, look at all that signage. They're going to see the signage in the front, and when they come around to the second front, they're going to see a similar amount of signage. So it looks like the other developments, looks very similar to the amounts of the other development. Also across the street, Walmart has a similar type of requirement in their PDD where they've extended their signage, so it looks very much the same. The final 2 things I'm going to talk about are is it the minimum required? And there's a spreadsheet in there, you don't necessarily have to go to it, where we have worked tirelessly with squeezing every little inch out of the signage. You know, when you get a requirement for signage that has 1/10 of a foot, you know you've really turned the screws with everyone possible. I can tell you it's taken a lot of effort to get every national retailer to back off what they expect, but we've done that and in some cases told people this is all you get, take it or leave it, praying that they don't leave it, that they take it. So everyone's in agreement, so we've trimmed this down to the absolute minimum that we could possibly have. And then the final question, harmony with purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance. We don't think the zoning ordinance intended for us to have smaller signage visible from the street than everyone else. I think this is a perfect application of the Board of Zoning Appeals where we have that unique 2-front and it allows you to make the code work for us at the same time not making it overly burdensome on everyone else. So with that, I'll entertain any questions that you might have.
So there are 2 questions that I have. I see a portion of that being future development.
Yes.
So in this variance, have you contemplated
We have.
what
Well,
signage may be needed?
we have,
for
and if you
future
want to flip to the
development?
spreadsheet, that might be, you know, we don't really know who they are, but rather than, you know, we realize we get one bite at this apple.
Okay.
And so what we've done is we've provided them a space on the general sign and a space in their back. So, you know, whoever comes in there is a take it or leave it. This is all the signage we have, and we won't come back to you for additional sign.
And it appears to me that Mattress Firm has 4 signs. I saw ABC.
Yes, they do. Mattress Firms is on the corner, and so they have a signage in the front, they have a signage in the rear, so, and then they also have a small sign on the side, as well as Panera also has the same type thing. They have a small sign.
So just to be clear, David, no single sign would be non-conforming based on the size of the tenant. It's just the number of the signs that make it.
It's not the number, it's the overall square footage. For example, Mattress Firm, they don't have over 300 square feet. You know, Wingstop has a very small amount. They're a very small building. Panera is not over 300 square feet. But the fact that they're put together, that's one thing I didn't really mention. You know, one of the things we've done is put together into a shopping center. And we've done something that a lot of people want us to do. We push the buildings up to the street so the parking is hidden in the rear. Doing that hurts us from a signage standpoint, because if we pushed everything to the back and had all the parking in the front, then, you know, we would need signage in the rear. So by doing some good things commercially, we've kind of hurt ourselves with signs.
I want to make sure I understand. I've tried to follow this, but it's, I got lost somewhere in the square footage and whatever.
Yes.
Anyway, the sign is at the corner of Percival Road and Forest, is that correct?
There's a, as staff mentioned to you, we got approval last week to do a group sign.
Right, and that's where the group sign is.
That's where our group sign is. If you see on this particular thing, there's a big yellow circle that says sign.
Right,
That'll be the
that's-
group sign.
I'm looking at the same thing. Yeah,
That's right.
so we're the same. Now, the other thing is now, I want to make sure, it's the same on the front and the back, right?
That's correct.
And so, I mean, one of the things that makes it easier for me to be in favor of your request is, at no point can anyone see both sides at once.
That's correct.
So
Exactly.
the garishness of the square footage is eliminated by the fact that it doesn't hit you at any given time, both sides.
That's the point we want y'all to really
Yes.
focus on, is that that's what we're asking for.
Yeah. Good.
That is exactly the point we want you to make.
Thanks a lot.
Are there any other questions for this applicant? Is there anyone here to speak in favor or in opposition to this application? Does staff have any comments? At this time, I'll close testimony, and I will take receipt of any motions.
A move to grant the request for the variance. I think the applicant has indicated in his testimony and the exhibits presented that there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions that pertain to this property that do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. It will prohibit, or at least certainly unreasonably restrict, the development of the property to deny the request. It will not be of substantial detriment to the adjacent property or to the public good or to the character of the district. Indeed, I think to some extent, the testimonies indicate that to grant the request will make it possible to be blunt, charge more money, and thus have better businesses, which is what we would like along Forest Drive. The reasons set forth in the application justify granting the variance, and they are the minimum necessary, and they will be in harmony with the purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance, and not to be and will not be injurious to the neighborhood or otherwise detrimental to the public welfare.
We have a motion from Mr. Hubbard. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second from Mr. McMeekin. All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Aye. So approved. Your request for a variance has been approved. Thank you. At this time, I would like to take a 7-minute recess.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. I got it. Okay. Would you do me a favor? I did.
7 minutes.
That's why I'm sorry. I want
Johnny? I'm good. How are you?
of 2015 Board of Zoning Appeals meeting for the City of Columbia. Mr. Cook, if you would call the next case, please.
Mr. Chairman, the next case is 15-035, special exception at 1620 Broad River Road, tax amount number 07308, 02, and 14. The property zone C3, this is general commercial. It's a special exception to allow a liquor store with an existing commercial building. The applicant is here, can answer any questions.
David Smith.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
Doing fine. How are you doing?
You are requesting a liquor store, which is governed by a special exception and the criteria therein. Could you walk us through the criteria for the special exception with respect to your application?
Sure. I don't have that sheet, but I have the questions on here.
All right, well, what is the impact of your proposed special exception upon vehicular and pedestrian safety?
We don't think it's going to affect the pedestrians or the traffic any more than what's already currently along Broad River Road.
And
we're also planning on increasing the parking area. It's got limited parking now. There's a structure that we want to tear down and add about 15 parking spots.
And tell me whether or not your proposed use will have any adverse impact on adjoining properties or environmental factors such as noise, lights, fumes, et cetera. And with respect to liquor stores, one of the major issues is loitering and things of that nature. So tell me what your thoughts are on that.
Well, we're pretty aggressive. We'd watch out there. We obviously we'd post no loitering signs. This place here being just a liquor store, we don't think that's going to be a problem. It's obviously bad for business for us to have people loitering out front. So.
And tell me how your proposed use will impact the aesthetics.
The aesthetics, as far as the area, as you can see, it's a commercially zoned area. There's a convenience store right to the right of the property. We are going to remove the one house-looking structure that's in the middle to increase for parking. And I do have kind of a site plan that I might distribute if that would help.
Did you include that in your application?
I didn't. They said I could bring it today.
If you would, please present that to staff, and they will give it to us to review.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just for the record, Mr. Hubbard left the meeting for prior engagement at 11:54, but we still have a quorum with 6 members.
Okay, excellent. Let the record reflect that the applicant submitted a detailed site plan identifying new proposed parking, future building expansion, existing parking, the location of the retail store. Put this in the record as applicant's Exhibit A. Tell me about the proposed use and how it's going to impact public safety, nuisance conditions, things of that nature.
Well, it's just going to be a retail liquor store on the front building to the left. It's going to be retail. The back area, we're going to use it for storage to warehouse our liquor. Possibly in the future, we may reface that back part of it or partial of it to build another retail unit for a separate type of business there. It's I got the layout for the store itself. There'll be shelving and the aisles and liquor on the side walls. And, but we don't, it's just a retail establishment.
Are there any other liquor stores in the immediate area?
There's one on the road they're both about a mile away on either side.
And will this proposed use be consistent with the character and intent of the underlying district?
I think so, yeah.
Will it be compatible for the location?
I think so. Mhm.
And are there any issues with respect to the public interest with respect to the use of this location as a liquor store?
Not that I'm aware of any issues.
One of the issues that staff brought to our attention was that of landscaping. If the board were inclined to approve this, one of the conditions of approval would be that you address the landscaping issues, specifically, let me see. Specifically that, that a landscape street protective yard be provided along Broad River Road so far as practical. Are you willing to provide that?
I can do that, yeah. I've actually worked with the city. I own a landscaping firm, so I've done some designs down that road as well.
All right. So you'll work with staff to,
Yeah, I can draw up something along the front, some islands, and on the side between the two buildings, and I have to look up the buffer requirements, but I can make sure we adequately take care of that. It's not
Okay.
a problem.
all right. Are there any more questions of this applicant from the board?
I mean, just to point out the obvious, we've had this come up in the past, that you've got to get whatever permits that are necessary from SCDOR to actually go sell liquor. I think there've been times in the past where we've granted approval and then people, or people don't anyway, but just
Yeah.
stating the obvious, you realize that this is not permission to sell liquor until you
Sure.
get clearance from DOR.
Yep. My concern was we were looking to purchase this building, and that was part of our purchasing the building, is that we are going to be able to get approved for the zoning for it.
Are there any here to speak in favor or in opposition to this application? If there are none, I'll close testimony and receive a motion.
Can I ask a question? Is it the residential house that's going to be torn down for
Yes, sir.
for the zoning? And so that doesn't question the staff, then that doesn't trigger a landscape requirement?
It most likely will. There are several criteria that its amount of area, et cetera. So it most likely will trigger partial compliance with landscape ordinance, including full compliance for the new surface. The comment in there about the, insofar as practical for the street protective yard, you may notice there's a manhole cover towards the front of Broad River Road, kind of in front of this white truck up there. Well, that's not working, but anyway, that may impact the ability to have a full street protective yard.
Back to the applicant, you're going to repave that area in stripes? That's going to be paved and striped parking once
Yes,
you get
sir.
through?
I just have one other question. The part where we talk about maybe extending the building, if you notice that building that's on the left that we're going to do to the retail, it sits recessed back to the other buildings, the convenience store, as well as the end of that shopping center. And I don't know if we go through building, but we would like to get it as close, I guess, up to the property line so it is visible and won't seem like it's recessed back there.
I don't know that that's in front of us today. So I don't know that we can make a decision on that. work with staff and
Correct. If the board is so inclined, the applicant would work with staff to come up with a, alternative landscaping plan, based on future site design.
Okay.
If there are no other questions of the applicant, I'll close testimony and move into board discussion or take a motion.
Make a motion to approve the special exception, case number 15-035 SE, 1620 Broad River Road, conditioned upon testimony given and the, what was set forth in the staff comments. I don't find that granting this special exception, there is no impact on vehicular pedestrian safety, environmental factors, aesthetics, public safety, nuisance conditions. Doesn't seem to be a concentration in the area. It's not out of character with that that part of Broad River Road. It's compatible, and there is no adverse affect to the public interest.
We have a motion from Mr. McMeekin. Do we have a second?
Second.
A second from Mr. Sally. All in favor, please state aye. Aye. Your request has been granted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next case is 15-037, special exception at 817 through 825 Main Street and 1120 College Street, tax map number 11304, 0705, and 06. It's a special exception to exceed the maximum density per acre for student housing development. Basically, the application is asking for 704 beds, approximately 246 units. As it is now under the C4 DD zoning for the property, private dormitories are allowed, but are limited to 150 beds per acre unless the board grants a special exception to exceed density. Again, 150 beds per acre, looking at 1.26 acres approximately. The applicant is asking for 704 beds. As of right, 189 beds would be allowed on the site. The criteria for a special exception are the standard criteria that you usually look at. Additional criteria for a private dormitory to exceed the maximum density of 100 beds per acre in C4 are that the applicant shall provide the Board of Zoning Appeals an operation and management plan that shall describe the programs of operation and management, including but not limited to use and activity that will occur with conjunction with the dormitory use, hours and operation of non-residential services, security plan including provisions for common and parking areas, noise control, provision for transportation including location for loading and unloading of shuttles or buses if applicable, location of entrances and exits, location and management of parking for residents and visitors, location of amenities and their relationship and compatibility with adjacent uses. The applicant has provided a plan for your consideration. It is located within your packet. The private dormitory will be required to provide an on-site manager that is available on site 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That is in addition to the additional criteria that I have just mentioned. The applicant is here to speak, and I believe there are some folks signed up to speak as well.
Is the applicant present?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Just give you an overview of the project. As you guys know, it's located on College and Main, about 1 block from the USC Horseshoe. As the zone deputy administrator said, it's about 704 beds, about 240.
Would you please state your name for the record?
I'm sorry, Rodney King.
All right, thank you.
I'm sorry. It's about 704 beds, about 246 units. 52% of the 52% of the beds are 4x4s, which is less than the 60% required. There's 578 parking spaces, 182 bike spaces, and 9 scooter spaces that was indicated to us that staff would like to see. The density exemption we're seeking is, we believe, is in keeping with the C4 zoning, and it is consistent with the long-range plan of the South Main District. As respect to item number 1 on the special criteria with adverse impact to traffic study, adverse impact to vehicular traffic, we've commissioned a traffic study and has been delivered to the city's traffic engineer, and the results of that study, it shows minimal impact and minor modifications that we will incorporate in our development.
Let me ask you a quick question.
Yes, sir.
Do we have a copy of the results from that study?
I do not have one on me right now, but the traffic engineer has received it, and it's going to the DDRC on Thursday for site plan review, and preliminary indications from the traffic engineer are that it's okay by the city. So I do not have a full copy of the plan on me.
It's preliminary, it's not absolute, the study.
Well, a conversation with the traffic engineer, he said that he was okay with it.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead, sir. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Item number 2, the proposed special exception will not have substantial adverse impact on adjoining properties. We believe the proposed density increase will not have an adverse impact on the adjoining properties. Resident parking will be located inside the building's garage, which will be wrapped by units not visible from the streets of Main and College. Also, the amenity space will be located above the garage on an amenity deck. Number 3, the proposed special exception will not have a substantial adverse impact on the aesthetic character of the area. We believe that this will actually improve the aesthetic character of the area. The project is located in the DD overlay district, and we plan to abide by all of their recommendations. Number 4, the proposed special exemption will not have an adverse impact on public safety. We've submitted an operations and management plan that includes the 24 hours a day, 7 days a week management plan. The manager will be on site in addition to what we call a community assistant program, in addition to off-duty law enforcement and/or security services will be provided to the facility during non-business hours. Number 5, the establishment of the proposed special exemption does not create a concentration or proliferation of the same type or similar uses. The proposed special exemption does not create a concentration of this type in the area. This project is unique in its location, being located at Main and College Streets, and it has a C4 zoning. The majority of the adjoining properties in that area do not have the C4 zoning, so we believe there would be, in the future type of this development would be severely limited without a rezoning of the parcels. Number 6, the proposed special exemption is consistent with the character and the intent of the underlying district as indicated. The proposed special exemption is consistent with the character and the intent of the C4 zoning, which has no height limitation. The question that we're asking for is a density exception, which we believe is in keeping with the C4 zoning, no height limitation. The proposed special exemption is appropriate for its location and compatible with the permitted uses adjacent into the vicinity of the property. With this location being, at College and Main Street, we think it is the prime location for this type of use, being adjacent to the university and adjacent to the entertainment district of the City of Columbia. The proposed special exemption will not adversely affect the public interest. The proposed special exemption is consistent with the intent of the zoning district and has adequate infrastructure, does not create a public safety or nuisance issues. It is complementary to the surrounding buildings and therefore does not affect the public safety. With that, I will try to answer any questions you guys may have.
One of the major questions that I have, and another board member shared with me, was that of public safety. And this is directed towards staff and the applicant. Usually when we get these applications, there is an independent security plan.
Correct.
And I see that you touched on the issues of security. but usually we have an independent security plan. And the reason why that comes into play from other issues that we've heard when it comes to private dormitories, I'm thinking most specifically to the one on Main Street, putting 704 bodies anywhere in the city of Columbia creates additional, I guess, a burden or additional issues for local police,
Correct.
for what would be campus police, and you are, I think, within the shadow of Carolina. So,
Correct.
can you expand upon all the things that are going to public safety, or can you provide a independent, not independent, but a separate security report? Don't we usually get that, staff?
Within the operations and management plan, based on some of our prior approvals, it was provided specifically, as far as the security, how you're going to address the security within the building. Yes,
Do we usually get a separate security plan? I know I've seen 2 or 3. Is that correct?
that's correct.
Is that something that you
We
can provide?
provided the emergency procedures in the packet. We feel that some of that information is proprietary and confidential, so we have the plan, but we did not want it to be a part of the public record. And I was here to expound upon that today. I've submitted the table of contents that shows how we address a myriad of issues with regard to public safety and/or the public interest. I think it's attachment 1 to the operations and management plan.
Chairman Kamadi, as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to have to leave to take
Okay.
my daughter to the airport.
I understand.
Mr. Chairman, just for the record, Ms. Sally left at 12:14. We still have a quorum with 5 members present.
Okay. Are there any particular voting rules that come into play with 5? Or are we still good at the 3-2?
Still good with majority.
Okay.
Gotcha, question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just curious with the scale of this, with a lot of these cases that come before us, people reach out to the different neighbors. This is a block from the horseshoe. What's the university's response been to y'all's proposal?
We've reached out to the university several times. We have not set up the necessary meetings with them. We've made several attempts to reach out with the necessary parties, including the CFO of the university. We've had conversations with them. From our position, they've been neutral on this project, but there's a university representative here, so I guess he could expound upon that. I don't want to put words in his mouth.
I'm just curious, there's been multi-level construction in the area that the university's participated in, but it's just not been this close to the horseshoe, so I was just curious what, if any, opinion they had about this proposal.
From our standpoint, I believe they've been neutral on it. Like I said, we've reached out to the CFO, and he has not expressed any negative opinions to us.
Okay.
As an attorney, I can appreciate the issue of proprietary security plans. I think, however, anytime we're looking at such a massive increase in density, and one of the things that we are tasked with is looking at public safety and public interest, I'm concerned about that. I don't know, and we may have to defer to legal for this. I don't mind reading it confidentially if you need me to sign something, but I am, public safety is the issue for me. We're taking it from as of right to 189 to 704.
Correct.
That's going to impact the city, it's going to impact campus security. I'm assuming since it's a private dorm, we're talking about 704 college-age students.
Correct.
And in other applications, we've had the security plan. So I'm interested in seeing that. I don't know if my other board members are, but that's a concern for me. I'd like to have that to make a fully informed decision.
Yes, sir. In regards to the city's impact, we've reached out to the city and we've had conversations with the mayor. He's fully supportive of this project, and so they are well aware of our development and seem to be supportive of it. But I certainly can provide the entire manual. We were actually not advised against providing it because it's a 90-page document, and the board may or may not wanted to read it prior to this meeting. And so, but we would still reserve the right to keep it proprietary and confidential.
If you need to work with staff or our council to figure that out,
Okay.
I'm willing to do that. If you want to find a way to abbreviate it, make it fewer than 90 pages, we'd appreciate that too.
And that was our intent by giving you guys an overview of the operations and management plan, the first 4 or 5 pages of the document,
Right.
to touch on security, that the facility will have a 24-hour, the manager will be available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We will have community assistants working in the building at all times. We will have off-duty law enforcement officers that will live on site, or we will have a security service to patrol the building, not only during non-business hours, but in addition to other operations that are going on with the city and the university.
And I'll tell you, what you're telling me sounds very similar to things that we've heard in the past.
Correct.
And so that's good, and I'm glad
Correct.
to hear that. But also in the past, when we've heard it, but we've also seen it, and we've seen how it works. And when we talk about doing something of this magnitude, we like to know that I think at one point when we had some discussions, we figured out what hours individuals were going to be on site and not on site, and we had a better
I think
idea.
we got
Mr.
that
What
with
was
the
on-
hub.
that is-
I think we had the same concern with the hub, with going from.
the hub, yeah. This was
With
the hub.
going from having, a big company that was putting people in and out during the day to having however many, 800 beds. And they may have had to have come back with a more detailed, so I'm not trying to set the stage for, but I just know in the past we've had, I think what we've got is kind of the condensed version, and I understand it, but I agree with the chairman. It's just finding that balance of, fine tuning it when you're, all of a sudden you're going to have 750 or 8, however many it is, bodies that normally don't reside there.
Was it the hub that brought their security person to explain the
I think it
report?
was.
Yeah, and that was
And I
helpful.
think we've had some other ones
We had
that
other
come
ones
in
as well.
closer back towards like UG and.
If I may ask, what information specifically are you looking for? We talk about the building's hours. We talk about the emergency response plan. We talk about the security services being there. That's all in the packet. I just want to make sure we get it right if we do have to come back.
I would be interested in actually seeing the security plan and seeing the details that support the things that you've told us. You talked about security on site. You talked about community assistance. I don't know if it's 2. I don't know if it's 4. I don't know if it's 1 per floor.
Correct.
There's
Okay.
some greater degrees of specificity that can help me feel more comfortable with the public safety issue. I'm not too far removed from my college days, and so, Monday through Thursday were pretty tame, but Thursday from 7 until Sunday after dinner were different. So
I don't think you can go overboard with the information you provide as far
Okay.
as public safety and security.
Okay. Well, we certainly have the information available. We're certainly willing to provide it.
Okay. Are there any other questions that this body may have?
No, I just would like to see a detailed security plan, because I already have experience with the one downtown, and with that mass concentration of people, I do know that it has taxed the city as far as the police department being called and the fire department on weekends.
Okay.
And that is that's a great concern of mine, and particularly in that neighborhood. That's going to be an awful lot of people, an awful lot of cars. I know what the Department of Transportation said. I'm not buying it. That's just in that small area, you're talking about an awful lot of cars and people.
Do you want to have a copy of, I guess, the report?
I really would like to see an absolute report.
Okay. Well, the report is final. It's been submitted to the city's engineer. We can definitely make available and submit it to the staff for you guys' review.
I think also I would like to see something more from the university. We've had several others, but I don't think anything has been as close as this project. So something stating the relationship with the university and the project, not only security and public safety concerns, but transportation is the university, where their stops now are located in regards to the project, how that's going to work out,
And we've reached out to the university. They've indicated to us that they will appoint a special liaison to EDR so we could keep the constant communication open so we can serve both goals. As of now, we haven't had that official contact yet. We will continue reaching out to the university.
Well, I think you mentioned that there was a representative here.
Correct.
So if that representative and you get together, I don't have any doubt that y'all can.
Yeah, I'm sure we can.
I think the right people in the room to facilitate discussion.
Well, with the open questions, I would like to ask for a deferral and try to come back and submit the complete information that the board has asked for.
And that's fine. Can we make sure that this applicant is slated for number 1 on next month's agenda, since they were here?
Yes, absolutely.
And if you work with staff, then they'll make sure that from these notes, the questions that we've asked are present, and we can then give it our full consideration with more information. We do have members of the public present. The applicant has requested a deferral, and so I'm going to move on their request for the deferral at this moment. The applicant's requested a deferral. All in favor of granting the deferral, please state aye.
Aye.
Aye. Your referral has been granted. You'll be placed first on next month's agenda.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other cases before us?
No, sir, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. At this time, I'd like to adjourn the May 12th, 2015 Board of Zoning Appeals.